In this video, we're talking about the Gadget Go Coaster retheme. We're going to kind of speculate on that. We're also going to talk about some brand fresh out the oven breaking news in regards to Genie Plus. We have a lot to talk about today. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome aboard to another episode of Orange Grow 55. I want to thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a stacked show today. We're going to talk about this Gadget Go Coaster retheme that we think is coming to Toontown, kind of speculate on that. And there was some Genie Plus news that dropped today with very interesting stuff on that. We're gonna discuss that and break that down. But before we do that, let's go ahead and introduce my fantastic guest, my collaborator, my producer, Mr. Producer Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed. How you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be here. This is a heck of a news week here. It's all sorts of interesting stuff, and to talk about even a little bit of it, I mean, I'm really excited about it. So thank you for having me on. Well, if you want to talk to me, you can go ahead and do so right down there at VashSky, just like it's spelled. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now on Orange Go 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info. Squeezed fresh right from the Grove. There you go. Let's get in the park and let's talk.
Let's do it. Okay, so the first topic today is Gadget's Go Coaster. Now, we all know that Toontown over at Disneyland is getting a reimagining, right? And we don't really know officially what's going to happen to the Gadget Go Coaster. Okay, so this is real. I want to preface this. This conversation we're going to have is all speculation. But it's speculation with it's kind of like intellectual guesstimation. We're you know what I'm saying? It's not out of the blue, right?
It's connecting the dots, I think. It's like, hey, this is happening over here. This is happening over here. You know, is there connective tissue between the two? I think there is.
Yeah, 100%. So for those of you that don't know, that Disney Plus is going to premiere their Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers movie in just a couple of days. I think it drops actually on Friday. And I got to be honest, I mean, for the most part, when I saw a lot of the promotional pieces for this movie, it looked a little cringe. And I think my biggest issue with it is the animation. And I was talking to Dre about this earlier today on the phone. It's like, you know, when like animation studios will outsource their animation overseas. And then to save money, to cut cost, they'll like eliminate like a lot of the in-between animation. So the animation looks really choppy. That's really what this movie looks like to me. A lot of the hand-drawn stuff like Chip and all that looks really cheap and choppy. And as an animation, I don't know, I guess you can call me kind of an animation purist in a lot of ways. I'm very particular with animation. It's kind of bothered me, right?
Yeah. Anyway,
long story short, I've been watching a lot of reviews on this Rescue Ranger movie, including from Mr. Christian Harloff, who I respect dearly. Christian Harloff is one of my favorite content creators. He inspired me to get involved in this space. And he gave this movie a lot of high praise. He gave it 4 out of 5 schmoes. That's high. That's very high. He was saying it's well written. It's smart. The comedy hits for the most part. It's a well done movie. Dre, before we kind of dive into how this connects to the Gadget Go Coaster,
sure.
What are your thoughts on kind of like the early buzz in regards to this Rescue Rangers movie that you're hearing on your end?
Well, yeah, I'm surprised by it because we've been seeing a lot of buzz for this movie come out of the various trades and critics and reviewers. You know, to a point that surprised even me. I thought, oh, okay, well, you know, maybe they might write this thing off here. Maybe the creators, you know, with the lines that they were drawing, you know, both literally and metaphorically, might not have connected with the audience. I was worried about that because they were taking some big, huge risks with the content and source material. But it seems to have resonated quite Well, at least with this audience. Now, who knows how the general public might feel when it actually makes its debut. I think Friday is what the release date is.
Yeah, I believe it's May 20th. It drops.
Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see what the streaming statistics are surrounding this kind of whole thing. But it's just a very, very kind of interesting film. It's taking source material that is very beloved to a particular demo, at least people who watch the Disney Afternoon and so forth, and are really taking some big risks and some big swings. The fact that it is getting at the praise that it is, it really did surprise me.
Yeah, no, it's really surprising me as well. And because like I said before, a lot of the promotional material didn't really hit with me. It didn't really resonate.
Yeah.
And I was a huge fan of the show. I love the Disney Afternoon. I mean, all those shows, Gummy Bears, DuckTales, Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, Goof Troop, all of them, man. Those are legendary shows. I mean, really, in terms of animation, the Disney Afternoon really is kind of like almost like the I Love Lucy almost of animation television in a way. I mean, it really is kind of like this kind of legendary kind of evergreen kind of thing. And then when I saw what they did with it with Rescue Rangers in this film, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I like that. I don't know if I like the animation. It's very meta.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And like you said, it's very choppy. There's some lost frames in there, and maybe they were trying to harken back to some of the old animated days, but it's a little bit too much compared to the live action. It just looks a little off, at least to me. Maybe they make sense of it in the films and so forth, in the films or so forth. Also, too, it's weird. So you have this kind of hand-drawn animation with this kind of live action. We've seen how that could look, at least with Roger Rabbit, I think is the best kind of comparison to that. And with Roger Rabbit, they took those animated cells and kind of like highlighted them and put some specular highlights on them and kind of like they put some digital framework around them to kind of make them integrate into the live action a little bit better. Whereas this is just like flat animation, and it's a little bizarre on that level. But I do apologize, sir. What were you going to say?
No. Yeah, I completely agree with you. You look at a movie like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I remember watching that as a kid and kind of being blown away by how amazing and how revolutionary that film was. Yeah. And I just can't imagine kids nowadays feeling the same way about this movie. But nonetheless, it's getting very, very good reviews. And that's going to kind of segue into our overall point with the Gadget Go Coaster, because Gadgets is prime for a reimagining. Disney confirmed this. It will be reimagined. Now, they didn't say to what. But if I was a betting man, I would say, because look, the ride already has the bones, the foundation for Rescue Rangers. The ride right now technically is a Rescue Rangers ride. It just focuses narrowly on Gadget.
Yeah.
If this Rescue Rangers movie becomes a huge hit, which it might because it's getting a good buzz, I would not be shocked at all if they kind of maybe not retheme it, because it's themed right now to Rescue Rangers technically, but maybe kind of refresh it and kind of adjust the angle at which they approach this theme and do more of a broader kind of Rescue Rangers coaster.
Yeah.
I could definitely see that happening if the movie is very successful. But what do you think, Dre, in terms of that?
No, I think you're exactly correct. I think there is a chance for that. We're seeing an aerial photograph right there on your screen, right there, provided by VashSky, which is pretty cool. Of Toontown, they're obviously working in and around this space. We see some scaffolds already up in some of these sections of the kind of Toontown perimeter and so forth. So, it would seem to me that they might be looking to update this or refresh this for Toontown's big debut in 2023. The question really is, what happens to Gadget Go Coaster? Because like you said, I mean, it's themed to one aspect of Rescue Rangers, but could we broaden it out and could we integrate it with this film if it does become a big success? I think there is a chance for that. I think there really is a chance for that. And maybe one of the reasons why we don't see much work on the coaster itself is because maybe they might be looking for those numbers and saying, hey, is C-Suite or Burbank going to give them the cash to actually go ahead and do this? Is it worth doing and all that kind of stuff? I would have thought that they would have gone with a more generic, maybe Mickey coaster, myself personally, or maybe a generic Chip and Dale coaster. But The Rescue Rangers thing, I mean, it is interesting. If, Chapek's all about following the data. He's all about relevant IP, super relevant IP, and integrating those into the parks, however that can possibly be. And now they have a golden opportunity here with Gadget Go Coaster.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. And it's interesting because this is like the only attraction that I could think of that is actually themed to a Disney afternoon show.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? It's a unique situation. So I wouldn't mind it becoming more of a Rescue Rangers thing, even if it does take on kind of the identity of the new movie. If you have a CGI Dale and a hand-drawn Chip, it's all good. And here's the thing, and this kind of touches upon what I wanted to say too. If you look at it from like, I hate to say realistic point of view, because anytime you have Toontown, it's hard to look at anything from a realistic point of view, but it's a Toontown, it's total fantasy. But in my opinion, if this kind of place existed, right, like a Toontown existed in our world, you would sort of see a mishmash, I think, of animation styles. I mean, because cartoons don't have just one uniform style, and you kind of see that, like, just with everything, all the content, right? And it's funny to me that like Toontown at Disneyland has sort of adopted this kind of uniform look for tunes, which is fine. I understand, but I've always kind of wanted more of a mishmash of different animation styles, even if it's jarring, just because I feel like that's kind of how a real Toontown would really be. It wouldn't be just one style. You would have maybe an area black and white. You'd have like a kind of like a television kind of style animation area, and one that's more detailed and what have you. So if they go with this Rescue Rangers theme for the coaster and they have a CGI Dale and a hand-drawn Chip, I kind of dig it, man. I kind of dig it because I've stood by this a long time. I think that any kind of Toontown would be representative of those different styles. I think that would be kind of cool to introduce into the land.
It would be kind of cool because we've not really seen that before, and I do agree with you. I think you would have a mixture of animation styles amongst the tunes, right? If this in fact is supposed to be a real living place that features some of these disparate animation styled cartoon characters. So it would be kind of cool to kind of get that in there and kind of be meta about it, in keeping with the film. I think that'd be really, really cool. And it also does, I know we've talked about it a lot on this show, but your idea of an ink and paint bar, would be so cool to take that even one step further. Have the old school, black and whites next to maybe the newer CG, maybe the 90s animation styles, 80s animation styles, and post what is it? It was like Caps technology, right? That we saw between Little Mermaid and I think it was Rescuers Down Under, right? The Caps animation stuff. It'd be cool to kind of see that represented, at least a little bit in Toontown, because I agree with you. I think that you would have a mixture of these styles, and maybe this is a stepping stone to that. There's a lot of possibilities here with this little coaster. There really, really is, and Disney's not, honestly, they're not that against retheming these little coasters. I know the kind of nearest representative sample of them doing this was with Barnstormer in at Walt Disney World, when it was part of Mickey's Birthday Land and so forth. It had one kind of theme, and then now it has kind of another kind of Flyers theme and all that kind of stuff when they made that transition with New Fantasyland. So when these lands get reimagined, and even within proximity, these things change, and I think there's a really good chance of this changing. The question really is, are they going to go down this route? I think they might.
They might. And even, I mean, honestly, in terms of like different animation styles coming to Toontown, we kind of see even a little bit of that, come to think of it, with Runaway Railway. Mm-hmm. That's not your traditional Mickey Mouse. It is. It's a different style. It's a different style than like what you and I grew up with, The art direction is very different than the art direction that Toontown was born with in the early 90s, with the more traditional Mickey. This is a little more stylized. So they kind of introduced it a little bit with Runaway Railway. and then to kind of go a little further with it with the with like a Rescue Rangers coaster would be kind of cool. I don't know. There's a lot of potential here. And hey, look, Disney loves to throw curveballs. You know, I mean, for all we know, it becomes a Goofy roller coaster, or it becomes, like you said, Mickey roller coaster, or it becomes something totally different. Yeah. They do this all the time. They throw these curveballs, and it kind of surprises us all. I just think at Rescue Rangers, if you're going to have the movie and it's going to do well, and you kind of already have the bones for a kind of a Rescue Rangers attraction there already with the Acorn coaster, it just makes the most sense. It's a synergy move, which they love right now. Yeah. It's kind of already, it would save money too, because you already have like the bare bones for that kind of thing already.
Right.
It just makes a whole lot of sense, and we'll see what happens. But this movie's getting some pretty good reviews, and I've got to be honest with you, I'm really surprised because it does not look good in the trailers, in my opinion. But that's just me, you know.
There's definitely a lot of controversial aspects to it. You know, we were talking about it over the phone, how like even their voices are completely different, right? And how it's like they don't match up with their characters. Now, apparently, what you were saying was that they have an explanation for that, and that's a very interesting kind of point there, which you can definitely extrapolate on. But you know, they're taking some risk. I'm telling you, they're taking some risk with these characters. Apparently, Roger's going to be involved too. That could have, that could have consequences for Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin potentially. Depending on what they do with that character. So it's going to be a fascinating kind of thing.
Yeah, and Christian Harloff, the YouTuber I mentioned a little bit ago, did mention in his review, like you were saying, Dre, like there is an explanation for the voices. Mm-hmm. And I have a theory on that. I haven't seen the movie yet. I have a theory on that. And my theory is that basically the voices that we heard in the Chip and Dale show are these two characters, Chip and Dale, sort of doing voice work, like changing their voice because they're playing a character, playing a role. But the voices you hear in this movie are their real voices. The chipmunky voices in the show are just for the show. Hey, we see it all the time with real Hollywood, real actors and actresses, where you'll watch them in a movie and they have like a total American accent, and then you see them like on Jimmy Kimmel and it's like they got a total British accent, totally different, right? They change their voice. I think that might be the direction that they go with Rescue Rangers, which I think would be pretty cool. That's kind of a clever way to do that,
Oh, yeah.
We'll see how that works out, but I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. We got to keep our eye on this re-theme of Gadget Go Coaster, what direction they go in. I think we'll hear probably as maybe in a few months, maybe D23, the direction they're going to go with it. I'm very curious if we're correct, Ray, in this.
I am curious too in this because it's like all of the pieces are kind of there, Yes, I know. It's kind of late in the game for some stuff like this, but I think Chapek does want Imagineering to be a little bit more forward thinking with this. Kind of have a plan A, but then a plan B. If things don't work out or they do work out. So I think at D23 Expo, I think we'll get all the rundown on what is really in store for Toontown. I think Toontown's going to make a pretty good. They're going to have a pretty good segment devoted just to Toontown, I think, me personally. But speaking of things that we also may have predicted, we just got a huge update coming out of Florida that I believe will be a kind of a company-wide thing. It'll involve both coasts, relating to a certain program that Disney may have debuted recently. You have more information on this? OG?
This is very fascinating. It's very fascinating. New information in regards to Genie Plus. Go ahead. I'll go ahead and share your screen.
Sure.
This is from, I believe, our friends over at blogmickey.com.
Yep.
So it says Disney Genie Plus will be quote unquote subject to availability starting June 8th. Sellouts now possible. And then it goes on to say here, in a reversal of their original policy, Disney has now stated that the Disney Genie Plus service will be, quote, subject to availability, end quote, starting June 8th. This is interesting, Dre. This is very, very interesting. What are your thoughts on this, man?
Well, my thoughts. Well, it's interesting because if for viewers of the show who may have been watching us not only on this channel but in a recent appearance that we made on a certain Drunk 3PO's channel, we actually talked about this in great depth. And one of the things I mentioned, well, it may have alluded to this, so I'll go ahead and play this little segment from this show right now. It shouldn't be too long. I think I got the right placement for it, so let's go ahead and see what we had to say on it. As a Genie Plus service. I mean, it really isn't working for everybody. And yes, Universal charges a lot, but like you said, if you remove that level of access or that accessibility, right, and you keep those numbers down, that's actually better for everybody. The standby moves more efficiently because that junction point cast member has less, they have less onus to put as many of those people through because there is so many people on the system, and for the people who actually buy into it, that works out a lot better because there's less people to compete with that system. So I've advocated for this, and from what I understand, Disney is against raising the cost. They are. They're from what I understand, from what I'm hearing in my sources, they're against it. They're probably going to have like a hard cap on it, just like they did with annual passes, which is going to, piss off a whole new round of people, right? And we're going to be back here. But this program was bungled from stem to stern. It is really bad. Also, yeah. So that's pretty much that. So it's interesting that 2 days ago we were talking about this, and one of the things that we mentioned was, hey, maybe they're talking about enforcing a hard cap. 2 days later, now we have this announcement coming out of Disney that they're going to have this hard cap.
Well, I think this pretty much confirms that Disney watches both OG55 and Drunk 3PO. That's clearly,
exactly, right? 100%. That's exactly what I was thinking.
No, 100%. But yeah, no, I think that because we mentioned it on Drunk 3PO show, and we've been talking about it too, just overall how they should limit the amount of people that are able to buy into this service. I mean, right. I think that if you're going to have and Universal, we've given Universal credit for this because Universal, ironically, in this situation, is actually more expensive than Disney when it comes to their paid fast passes, right? And it limits the amount of people in that system, which is actually beneficial to the people that do pay into that system. If there's less people in that system, when you do it, you're not going to wait at all. You're going to you're going to get right on.
Yeah.
Genie Plus, it's a lot more available. So more people buy in and the lines are going to be longer, even if you pay for it. So this is actually, I think, a good move by Disney. I think they should, whatever way they can, limit that availability, and that'll create shorter lines for those Genie Plus paid customers or guests. And I think that's the right move. And it looks like that's the way they're going.
I am surprised they're going this way, I will admit, because I thought price was the way to go with this, simply because, if you look at Universal's offerings, it's much more expensive than Genie Plus. And even in Paris, Disneyland Paris, they have like a €90 a day per person version of this system that will be debuting here shortly. So I thought $15 or whatever, that's way too cheap for this kind of service, especially in the mindset of people, because when they got rid of FastPass and they debuted a Genie Plus service, people were expecting that it was going to be kind of a friendly line offering, not too dissimilar to Universal and some of the other parks that people are more familiar with. They didn't quite understand that this was just basically Max Pass, laid out for Walt Disney World guests, and the adoption rate is just been dramatic. The other thing that article alludes to, and they had a separate piece on this, was that they were going to get rid of what do they call it, pre-arrival purchases. So when you're booking your vacation package or getting your tickets, they were going to stop that, and they've also discontinued that in the app, if I'm not mistaken. And from what I understand, that was a big reason why the adoption rate was so high, because people just felt, hey, you know what, for $15, that's just part of my ticket price now. And I know I've had the same discussion with our family. It's just like, we got to just stick that on because we can't, spend hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars on rooms, accommodations, either flights, shuttles, all that kind of stuff, and risk not maximizing our time in the parks because it is like $15 per hour to be inside. An extra $15 to save a lot of time and to maximize that value. That was a no-brainer for a lot of folks. And now they're getting rid of that. It just goes to show you that what we've been saying on this show that you didn't hear on many other shows was that the service, it just had way too much adoption. And that was screwing up so many other operations when it comes to these parks.
No, yeah, 100%, 100%. It's kind of like, when you go in to buy a car and you're already financing $40,000, right? I'm just throwing a ballpark figure out there. Let's say you're going to go in, you're going to buy a Honda Accord. It's 35, 40 grand, right? You're financing. And then the car guy says, you want to add on the navigation for another 1,500. It's like, what's 1,500 when I'm already paying 35 grand,
100%.
It's the same idea. And I got to give Disney a little credit. I mean, like you said, like it would have been very easy for them just to sort of like, just go kind of like, as George says, balls to the wall. Right. And just hike that price up as high as they can and do it that way. And they didn't. And that shows a lot of, in my opinion, I think that shows a lot of constraint, and we get a lot, we give, as fans, we give Disney a lot of crap for being very expensive, and they could have gone that route, and they decided not to. Hey, credit where it's due.
I suppose I just worry what happens when people get denied access to this service. What happens when people can't get this service that they may feel they desperately need. How is that going to all play out when it comes to guest relations and so forth, and the complaints are attached to the service? Now it's like, now I got to wake up at the crack of dawn just to get on it and stuff like that, which people are already not a fan of. It's really going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. From what I understand, Disney has been using this as kind of a guest recovery system where, people go into guest relations, complain about one thing or another, and Disney's all too willing to just write off their Genie Plus and Lightning Lane purchases as sort of a make good, so to speak, from whatever complication that they're experiencing, whether it's Genie Plus or not. It's just fascinating how this is all kind of taking these turns. But when you listen to the quarterly news report or you hear about Bob Chapek talking about it, they don't allude to any of these things, and it's a total disconnect from what I'm hearing from within versus the face that they're making on the outside. But it's interesting to see kind of where this goes. I pulled up a tweet right here that I thought was very interesting and that I thought we could bring up on the show.
Sure.
Disney Glimpses. Disney Glimpses, right? Yeah, exactly. He's great stuff, folks. If you haven't been following Disney Glimpses, go ahead and follow him. He's got hot takes and all kinds of stuff. But a lot of his predictions for the future and so forth, and a lot of what he has to say, he's right more often than not. I'll give him that. I will give him that. But he says something interesting. He says 2 big unknowns regarding Genie Plus starting next month. How difficult will it be to purchase Genie Plus, which is an appropriate question for sure. And 2, what does the inventory look like? How much are they willing to, sell this service? Are we, I think the days of 50% are over, but is it 30%? Is it 25%? Is it, 35%? I think that's going to be an interesting question. What makes the best experience? If it's relatively easy to purchase before 8 a.m. and they substantially limit sales, it could be a really great experience. That's true. Because remember, more people who are on the system, it's bad for everybody. Not just for the people on the standby, but for the people on the system as well. They will likely start with a low inventory and then dial it up slowly to reach a point that they consider to be an acceptable Genie Plus experience. What that is, no one knows. Certainly significantly better than it is right now. And I think that's correct.
100% and 100%. And will there be people that are upset that they can't get on the service? Absolutely. But look, there's never going to be a perfect system. There's always going to be something, and whether it's accessibility, whether it's pricing, there's always going to be something. Like I've said it many times before, when it comes to like the pricing of like tickets and annual passes when it comes to the parks. Mm-hmm. If you price annual passes or Magic Keys, I got to stay on brand, Magic Keys. If you price them too low, right? Which arguably I kind of think they are too low right now, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Right.
But if you price them too low, then you have the crowding issue where
Yeah.
it's like it's too crowded. Like once you get into the park, you can't enjoy it because everyone's there and it's too packed.
Yeah.
If you price them too high, though, then you're pricing families out, and then you're the bad guy because you're pricing people out. You become the Cartier of theme parks, and that's bad optics too. So it's a tough call, but there's always going to be that kind of like there's never going to be a perfect system. Basically, what I'm saying, where it's cheap, affordable, everyone gets in. There's no crowding. There's unlimited availability, but no wait times. There's always as fans, we got to give up something. We just do.
You do.
You know, so.
You do. It's accessibility. It's kind of like that triangle arc, right? When you're, it's like when you're remodeling a house, right? It's like it's either going to be good, it's going to be cheap, or it's going to be fast, right? You can't have all three sides of the triangle. You got to pick two, right? Well, it's similar to this, right? It's either going to be, no crowds, accessible, or cheap. You can only have really like two, right? So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, which one do you want? Because you're going to have to break off at some point. If people, if people are okay with spending $15, then you have to have a hard cap because it's a bad experience for everybody. And this doing it this way actually has an interesting. It could have an interesting effect on operations because now the incentive might be towards efficiency and efficient operations and all those kind of things. We had alluded to on even Drunk 3PO's show, but in previous shows that the incentivization was a little bit perverse because, the incentive is, well, maybe we don't have the most efficient ops because we want to push people towards this service. Well, if you have a hard cap and you're selling that cap at every single day, then the incentivization towards efficiency actually goes up, not down. So this is one of those things that might actually be really, really good, even better than my solution being price. In that it might actually incentivize them to go back to the old operational style of efficiency, and more accurate wait times.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I was actually just kind of like, and it just kind of hit me like out of nowhere. And it's related to this, but it kind of isn't. But in terms of Magic Keys, right? In terms of Magic Keys, and we see a lot of Magic Keys in the headlines right now because that lawsuit's going forward. Right? Yeah. The lawsuit's going forward. We talked about it. I think we even talked about it on Drunk Show.
We did.
But that lawsuit's going forward, and all the Magic Keys. It's a very unique situation. All the Magic Keys are up for renewal in August, and I mentioned it on his show. Where like I don't know, man. I see a lot of complaining from the fandom over the years, but they always end up just buying anyway. Mm-hmm. But here's the interesting thing, because I was thinking to myself. Okay, so August will be interesting because we'll see how many of these Magic Keys actually renew because a lot of key holders are very unhappy. Mm-hmm. But with the lawsuit, that's going to change everything because like we've talked about before, they're more than likely already working on a reimagining of this program.
100%.
So the program that we're going to be renewing into is most likely not even going to be the program that we're currently in. So are we ever really going to see are we ever going to really see the data? Because like the program that we're renewing into might be completely different where fans might go, oh, that's actually kind of better. I'll renew. Right. Yes. So it's like, oh shit. Like I just thought about it. Like, will we ever see like how this is going to affect key holders with, in terms of renewals, because I don't even think we're going to be renewing into the same system. Right.
And I do agree with you a lot. It's interesting. George, Disney Family Man, which we love, and I just had a video on this about the prospect of actually renewing. And one of the things that I was, alluding to was this system might be much different than where we are right now. And that's why I told George, maybe you renew, but take it 1 year at a time. really evaluate whether or not the program actually works for you, because it might be a completely different program than what exists right now. And you already see those changes. You already see the hard caps on how many are being sold, right? Because you can't necessarily buy a higher tier annual pass on either coast right now. Right. So that's kind of an interesting thing that's going on there. We're seeing the buckets, being adjusted as a direct result of that lawsuit. And I think they're taking it one step further in coming up with a system that is better than maybe what might be on offer right now. That takes care of some of these issues, naturally. And maybe, the annual pass is interesting because even before all of this, even before 2019, I was hearing one of the ways that Disney was considering fixing this annual pass holder issue, which unfortunately, that's kind of what they consider it internally, at least at Disneyland, because it's, there's so many annual pass holders. Yeah. At that point, it was like 1 million, right? Because the prior solutions of increase the price, well, that didn't necessarily get people off the system, and if anything, it moved them down another tier. So now you're getting getting less money but same bodies a lot of times. So it was like maybe a hard cap is necessary, and I was like, whoa! I mean, that's a huge deal, because now you might be denying people access to this place. If they can't get an annual pass, that how is that going to go over? We've already seen that, ironically, but maybe that comes back again in some kind of altered form where they hard cap it to a point where maybe they up the number of services or reservation days or whatever, but they just have a hard cap on the system itself. It's going to be fascinating to see.
It's going to be really fascinating. It's going to be really, really fascinating because Disney's not going to want to take, if Disney's kind of sensing there's kind of like this really uneasiness, is really like this anger out there with the Magic Keys. And that there's a real possibility that a lot of Magic Key holders are going to fall off the system in August. Mm-hmm. It's in Disney's best interest to reimagine that program.
Yes.
Before they renew.
Yep.
So that doesn't become an issue. Kind of.
Yes.
Be proactive, and so yeah, I think we'll see changes. I think it's going to be we can pretty much guarantee the blockout language will be left out of anything.
Oh, 100 for sure. Oh yeah, 150% on that, by the way, because that blockout language really got them into trouble. The problem is and this goes back to what we were hearing before the Magic Key system was debuted, right? Even Chapek said, "Hey, a loyalty pass program." He was using completely different language and how they were going to reimagine it, all this kind of stuff. But really, they just kind of foisted the reservation system on their old system. Not too dissimilar to how what they did with FastPass and Journey Plus. That's a whole other story, though. But because of that, they've now birthed this new, monster system, as it's, as some have referred to the FastPass system. And it's like they just fouled it up, it's because they rushed the system out. You can tell because they had the blackout language in there, which they shouldn't have had it at all. And honestly, if they didn't, maybe this lawsuit doesn't go forward. Maybe it does just get dismissed, but it's just out of hand, right? But it's like, and we were just having this conversation the other day, OG.
Yeah.
It all stems from one thing. All this stuff that we're contending with, it all stems from one thing. And that's accessibility. And with the annual pass holder or Magic Key program, it stems from one accessibility feature, and that's monthly payments. Back in 2008, when they implemented these monthly payments, that's where we saw this explosion of growth in the annual pass holder population. And that's where a lot of the issues, even relating to crowds in Disneyland and all of those subsequent problems, it all stems from that one thing that they just can't stop.
Yeah, if they were to get rid of that monthly payment program, and you had to pay $1,400 up front,
yep,
a lot less people would buy into that pass.
Exactly,
that's and maybe that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and but it's to have that drop off, maybe that would make for a better system for everybody.
Right.
Maybe it would make reservations a lot more available. And maybe, crowds at the parks wouldn't be as severe as they are now, and might might be in the coming days,
Yeah.
But it all stems from the fact that, for this local population, for which, 75% of Disneyland's annual visitation comes from people, within 250 miles, making it easier for them to go to the parks has really caused some big problems. And we see them attacking it on the Genie Plus level,
Right.
but they may seriously need to consider how to attack it on this level as well.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Something has to be done. Something has to be done. It really has been a growing problem for years, long before Bob Chapek.
Yes.
I remember reading, like I said, I think like a few videos ago, I even mentioned, like, I remember reading like Al Lutz articles from like 2008 and stuff and 9 about the how Disney was concerned about the growth of this annual pass program, and that it is really kind of it's flooding the system. It's been an ongoing issue. Disney's had its eye on this for a very, very long time, and I hope eventually they can perfect it. Where, you know what, fans are happy. We're happy with what we're offered and what we're getting, and Disney's happy with what they're getting. And I hope it can kind of be this symbiotic, happy relationship where we can kind of find that middle ground. And Ken Potrock, Disneyland Resort president, kind of touched upon that a little bit when he did like the state of the Disneyland Resort thing at the end of April, where I think he even touched upon how, like he said, these things are like kind of like in flux. Like he kind of acknowledged, and it was kind of refreshing to hear him say this, but he acknowledged that there have been mistakes made. Things have not worked 100%, and they're constantly trying to come back and reevaluate and adjust things and perfect them as we go. They're not going to get it right always, but they're going to try to kind of evolve these things as they go. And that was refreshing. And that could be corporate talk, and that could be just whatever. But it was good to hear that at least he was acknowledging like these programs are not perfect, and they do see that, and they are going to work on kind of improving them as we go. I think that was encouraging.
It was. I just feel it's like, oh, do you have to go through this process with Disney's, with people's vacations, with people's memories, that indentures a lot of bad will. I mean, look, historically, Disney has debuted these things slowly over time. They've slowly modified things and transitioned into things so that it's, people can kind of get a grasp on it. And it's not too many changes too fast. But when they reopened the parks back on, and a lot of this was due to the pent-up demand for people and just a various number of issues, they went all in on some of these systems. They went so far, so fast. Now people, hate this process, and they hate these services and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, man, they didn't really have a chance. They should have slowly transitioned these things over a 10-year span rather than just go all in a couple of months' time, and it's just unfortunate how it's all worked out, but it is encouraging that Disney at least is recognizing that, maybe we should do some readjustment down the line here.
Yeah, we'll see how it all pans out, how it all evolves. It's definitely a work in progress, and I'm telling you, this Magic Key program is not going to be the same program when renewals come around in August.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you.
With that, it's in their best interest for sure. For sure,
100%, 100%. I'm very, very, I'm pretty sure that once the fall comes around, I should say, and once those renewal dates pop up, once D23 Expo's on the horizon and all that kind of stuff, we may be looking at a very different very different theme park experience, at least operationally. But we'll also have some good things to look forward to, I think, when it comes to the D23 Expo. I heard it reiterated again by Dusty that he expects a Tomorrowland redo coming at the D23 Expo. So I heard, it was crazy. It was like, man, he's really confident on this. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. Hey, from Dusty's lips to God's ears, let's hope that happens.
Let's hope. And let's hope it's done with some quality.
Yes, 100%. 100%. If you can't do it right, don't do it. And if they don't have the budget for it right now, just wait 5 or 10 years and then do it, because it's not worth digging all that up if we're gonna have to revisit this thing again in a few years.
100%.
We'll see. But producer Dre, VashSky, thank you so much, brother, as always, for coming on. A fantastic conversation about Magic Keys. The Chip and Dale conversation was it was nuts, man. It was nuts.
I see. All right, we got to do it. Here we go.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
There you go.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was a really good time, though, man. And if you can let everyone home know where they can find you on social media.
Hey, best place to interact with me is going to be on Twitter. It's right down there, just like it's spelled, @VashSky. Lots of, like we would say, Christine Wastelands McCarthy would actually say, robust discussion. Yep, there you go, right there. I still got to get that drop, by the way. It's great. And, well, if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that's where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching today. It was a great conversation. Comment down below with your opinions on all the stuff we talked about. Magic Keys, Gadget Go Coaster, Genie Plus, all this stuff. There was a lot to dive into. We appreciate all the support. And I also just want to say, again, a big thank you to Drunk 3PO for having us on his show the other day. We had a really, really, really good time. And it's cool, like, as a fandom, to sort of come together, whether you agree or disagree, and just kind of come together with that core love for parks, for theme parks, and kind of like, just, hey, we might disagree, but we're here for this one common thing that we do love. And it was really a fun time. So I just want to say thanks again to Drunk.
Oh, man. It was really great meeting him and him having us on. It was a real blast. And yeah, like, obviously everybody has differences, but to come together over this kind of mutual love of the parks, it was really fantastic. It was really great.
Yep. And thank you all for watching so much. Comment down below. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.